Hi, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I'm jumping on the podcast today with a wonderful human being named Emily. We connected via Instagram. She currently lives in Minnesota and she's also been part of the dance and performing arts industry practically her entire life. We have a lot of topics that we want to cover together, that we have a lot in common from our previous experiences with dancing, dance mentorship, and just growing up basically in the dance community and striving to be the best performers that we can be. But with that can also come a lot of trials and errors and frankly, some traumas as well. So it's going to be really interesting to dive into these really important topics so that now, being in our 30s, we can move into a brighter future, but also be a really positive influence on younger dancers out there as well. So here we go. Well, I'm so excited that we're connecting.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out to me.
Yeah, and it's been quite spontaneous for the both of us, I feel. I just had this feeling to like ask you if you wanted to jump on. But for everyone listening in, I just stumbled on Emily's Instagram as we do when we're scrolling and things. I don't know if the algorithm just it popped up. And yeah, I instantly like resonated with your energy, and then going through your page and looking at the kind of content that you're putting out there about like dance culture and now that you're in your 30s. And when I read that too, I was like, I'm in my 30s and I've come from the same background. So I feel like you and I are definitely kindred spirits with similar experiences. And yeah, it was like looking into a mirror, looking at your content. So yeah, and
Yeah,
I feel
wow.
like I'm sort
That's a
of
compliment. Thank you.
oh, definitely. Like, I do the podcast and whatever I post, I personally hope to inspire others or that others can see themselves in my story as well. And I got to be on the receiving end of that when came across your content. So, I suppose we'll start at the beginning and work our way back to our 30s now. But just to give like a bit of a backstory of who you are and your dance background, like how did you get into dancing? And I know we talked about like competitions a little bit over text message, but yeah, just if you want to like share with us who you are and some of your background to begin with.
Sure. Yeah, so I got started in the competition world when I was 6, but I started dancing when I was 3. So dance has been forever part of my journey, part of my life. And I did that all the way up until high school because, I mean, dance has always been my first love, and that's obviously how I kind of got into the performing arts industry. But then in high school, you're changing, you're going through a lot of growth, and I wanted to do other things. And the theater, I found the theater in high school, and that's where I felt this sense of community and this sense of belonging. And I felt like I could let loose and be my weird, quirky, fun self, and people accepted me for that. And I think that core emotion is what made me fall in love with theater. Because dance felt, I hate to say this, but in some ways it did feel like a chore. And I think it was because of the environment I was in. Whereas theater, I felt free. I felt this sense of freedom. And it felt like I wanted to be there. I didn't have to be there some days. So yeah, that's kind of how I weaseled my way into the performing arts world.
Yeah, and like I'm happy to share with you about myself too, because we're sort of getting to know each other at the same time. But yeah, I have a similar story. I probably got into competitions around the age of like 10, 11. Um, and so yeah, I started dancing at the age of 3, and then it escalates the older we get. At the age of 17, 18, I trained full time. So I did 1 year of full-time training. And then I found theatre as well through high school. So year 8 was my first ever musical theatre production. We did Calamity Jane. I got to play a cowboy. And then
Nice.
because of that kind of fun, I found that really fun. I turned it into a comedy thing. Um,
Yeah.
it was just, yeah, and be my quirky self as well. So like I totally understand where you're coming from. What was your first theater production that you did?
Oh my God. It's really funny to say this, but it was You're in Town, the musical.
Oh yeah.
My first musical about pee.
Yeah.
It's the classic comedy story. But You're in Town, if you think about it, it's actually like a Shakespeare play.
Right.
It's if you've ever seen it or know anything about it, it's deep.
Yeah.
Like it is deep. And I think that sometimes the beautiful thing about comedy is there's always, at least comedy that I like, there's always that hidden underlayer of, okay, what is this actually about? What is the pain and the darkness behind the comedy, underneath the comedy?
Yes.
But yeah, I was like a freshman in the ensemble of You're in Town. I kind of just felt like I was there. And I was living my best life, met some of my best friends. Um, yeah, you're in town.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I think I did a showcase once. I used to do these summer schools and we all used to come together and our mentors would run us through. It'd be 2 weeks intensive. We'd learn all these songs from all these different musicals, and then we just put on like 2 or 3 shows, and it was every January. So it was called Starbound, and it's still
Yeah.
running to this day. They're up to like 25 or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. It's still going, but those are some of my best memories as well. And I came across some songs from Urinetown. I didn't perform them, but that was some of the songs that were put into the showcase, and I kind of came across it because of that. So, yeah, the premise of that musical is they're in a society where they have to pay to use the public bathroom. Is that right?
Oh, sure is.
Yeah, and that was existing in some countries or still does now, right? Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Well,
wild.
just themes of capitalism in general and corruption.
All the
It
best
honestly
ones.
gets pretty dark. It gets pretty dark. And also just like freedom and liberation and
Hmm.
like the power of community, the power of using your voice to speak up for injustice, which in the musical seems so comical. Come on, you know. Um which ironically, I don't think it was just circumstance that it was my first musical because now as an adult in my 30s, I'm like, oh, I'm actually doing that. That's what I feel like my social media is about.
Hmm.
I don't just want to use it as a platform to post a cute selfie. I'm sorry. I want to create community and share things that honestly, quite frankly, I feel like I've been holding inside for my entire life
Yeah.
and use my voice in a way that I felt like I couldn't as a dancer. And I just want to be that like safe page, that safe place for people to be authentic in a social media world that feels so inauthentic. And I think has caused so many performers, so many dancers, so much trauma and pain, especially Gen Z. It's a whole thing to unpack. So I'm trying to be that voice of liberation and that voice of justice to be like, it's okay. We all feel things and we
Yeah.
shouldn't be afraid to share our story.
So, like, now that you are where you are now in your 30s, when you look back on your journey and the past experiences, like now we get to look back at our past through the lens of a 30-year-old and someone who probably has boundaries and know what boundaries are now and knows how to implement boundaries. Like it took me a lot of years of therapy to learn all this stuff, and then it not only it's such an amazing thing, but like once you learn it, you implement it in every area of your life too. So it's yeah, it can be quite intense with all kinds of relationships, but at the end of the day, it's to help to protect yourself. So what I'm trying to say or what I'm trying to ask is like now when you look back on your experiences, like you probably want to really hug that young girl and kind of walk, like hold her hand and walk herself through that entire journey. But we did it alone, and we end up coming across certain individuals like mentors that are toxic, and that definitely happened to me multiple times. And
Yeah.
so, but there's no protector in the room. There's no one being like, that's a bit out of line and I think especially in the ballet world, it's expected that these teachers in the ballet world too are very hard and very my one of my teachers, like she was incredible to get results out of you, but her tactic was fear. And then I had another mentor that was very similar. Like his tactic was like kind of putting students down and like singling them out, and it
Yep.
wasn't like a nurturing environment. It was like everything seemed to be based in a negative tone. And now that I teach, I'm trying to teach a lot of high standard, body alignment or things like that, but do it in a way that's more fun and that people want to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like walk us through some of those experiences. Like you don't have to name names, things like that, but like what were some of the experiences that really stand out to you?
Oh, I was like taking multiple deep breaths just as you were saying that because again, as I'm 30 now, I don't know what it is about 30. I think something just clicks, especially that
Yeah.
transition from 29 to 30.
Mm,
Um, I I still have a lot of trauma. And I'm realizing even just talking about it is hard sometimes, but
yeah.
it's also necessary, I think, because I'm a firm believer in holistic health and that trauma lives in the body because
Hmm.
emotion is energy and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So
Hmm.
it has to go somewhere.
Mm,
So people wonder, why do I develop this, you know, disease or this physical thing? Obviously, there's a lot of theories, and this is another topic, but again, I just think it is all related to emotion and all related to trauma. So it's important to talk about it.
mm,
Um,
I agree.
but, similar to you, I think a lot of tactics used by the teachers I had were based in fear and based in comparison, singling somebody out in front of the whole class. It's embarrassing.
Mm,
And as a teacher now, I understand certain things that perhaps my teachers were frustrated by, not to validate their behavior, but to maybe understand why they were the way they were. And some of those things are number one, talking when I'm talking, like that is disrespectful, you know.
mm,
But there's a way to go about it where you're not yelling and being rude.
hmm,
There's a way to have a talk about talking in class and setting that boundary that is not rude. So talking is one where that's where I get frustrated as a teacher. Um, and just, you know, I guess you could say being lazy. We hear that a lot, being lazy. But what is lazy? Like we have to look at what is underneath of a child being perceived as lazy.
mm,
Genuinely not want to be there? Do they not like dance? Are they there because their parents want them to be there, which is a whole other discussion. Um, and are they struggling in school? Like, what is that emotion underneath? So we can never just assume a dancer is lazy. And maybe it's the environment itself. Maybe the environment is too intense and too strategic, so then they're rebelling.
mm. Yeah.
So it's like going back to the thing of how can I take what I learned how not to do and be the teacher that I needed.
Mm,
Um, so if I'm circling back to your question, again, a lot of the things are just based in fear tactics. And I think teachers, and I don't know this about my teachers, honestly, I don't know their personal lives, but teachers who I think once dreamed of being performers and never got there should never be teachers, period.
I agree. I've
Period.
had some really negative experiences being a teacher at an actual dance school and working with other teachers that I feel had that about them. I had an
Yeah.
experience. This is 10 years ago now, which I can't believe this was 10 years ago because time has just flown.
Yep, it has flown.
But I on a whirlwind trip, I took myself to LA and I was only 24 at the time. And I just really wanted to get overseas before I turned 25. I turned 25 on the plane coming home. It was just coincidental. But I went over there and I did some classes at the Millennium Studios. And yeah, I just was watching all the videos on YouTube of all these amazing dancers in that dance room. And I was trying to make opportunities at the time. I was doing a lot of like self-improvement. And I was saying to myself, like, nothing's stopping me from booking a ticket, registering for a class, and being in that room. Like, I was trying to really work on my mindset around making things available to me and opportunities available to my mind. Um, so basically, I went and did the thing and I like threw myself at that. And, like I didn't go over there with much money and I was there for 8 days and then I flew home. So, to fly to LA from Australia, it's a 16-hour flight. So to go there and be jet lagged, and I just did it for 8 days and then came home. But it was sort of like, I think yeah, I went over there middle of the year. So August, end of August is my birthday. And when I came back from that experience, like I returned to teaching at that dance school, and I just felt a major shift in energy with how I was being perceived. And especially when you're young and you want to really go for things and you're a go-getter, like that can be threatening to other people, especially
Yes, it
when they're
can.
much older, they're in a different
Yep.
chapter of their life. But it really affects people in the wrong way when they haven't dealt with it properly. So I felt energetically, I felt pushed out of that school, without going into too much detail, but there was so many different accounts of like communication and vibes don't lie that I just knew I wasn't welcome there. Um, and I think as well, I've been a student as a young child growing up, and I'm still now pursuing wanting to go to New York and I want to get on Broadway, and I'm 34 at the end of next month. So I just finally feel like now I'm only just coming into my own and I'm just getting started because I've been able to put all the bullshit from what happened in my 20s and teens, and I now understand it, and I'm an adult now, and I've sort of I can leave it behind and like keep going, keep going, keep going. Um, but just to go back to the thing of as well, you mentioned like young students can come across as lazy, or that's what they're labeled in the classroom by other teachers. Um, it is like that shaming tactic of like telling people off to shame them and to make them fall in line. It can be very like military, but I forgot about that for myself because I remember being told when I was probably, between the ages of 11 and 13 that I was lazy. And I hate to say the same thing, but it felt like a chore.
Yes.
It had that kind of, I feel obligated to be here. This is my hobby. My parents are paying for this. I'm good at this. And when you're good at something, I think you can feel the pressure too. So,
Absolutely. Um, yeah, I think, at least for me, when I was being called lazy, I think for me it was just I was rebelling to the confinement.
Yeah.
Um, because I felt it did in some ways feel like military, where I was being fit into a box. I had to be perfect. I was being told exactly what to do. And I realized, quite frankly, my personality does not vibe with that. I'm like, don't put baby in a box. That is
Yeah.
like my whole motto. I'm realizing I was born to stand out. I was not born to conform. I was born to be a disruptor. And a lot of people aren't going to like that. And I think there's an aura and there's an energy of a disruptor that people can sense. And they don't know what it is. And I think that's back to what you were talking about like you just went back after you went to that intensive and you felt the vibes. Energy does not lie. And people can either be inspired by that or people can be intimidated by that. But because I'm a deeply sensitive, highly sensitive, empathic person, I could feel that. And so what happened was instead of recognizing that, oh, this is their projection onto me, I internalized that.
Mm.
So now I'm energetically carrying their projections, their fear, and I have mistaken it as my own. I've been told, oh, they don't like when I'm too big, when I'm too bright. So I must make myself small in order to appease them, to make them comfortable, so they like me, so I feel like I can belong. And the irony is, I haven't felt like I've belonged in a long time. The last time I felt like I truly belonged somewhere within a creative environment was my high school theater when I was doing Urinetown. You know? Um, and that's just how it's been.
So, in the dance room, it obviously gave you a sense that you didn't belong or you were singled out. You were a bit of a rebel, a bit of a disruptor. Probably later on, do you feel like when you're able to break away from all of that, you felt like you could really let your rebel out because you could then break away from that, but you sort of had your training, but you could take whatever was formalized and like make it your own.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think what competition dance taught me was consistency and discipline, which discipline I think is a loaded word. Um, yeah. But now that I'm sort of creating my own work online and I'm doing my own little thing, um, I'm realizing that I'm using some things that I actually learned in competition dance, which again goes back to the importance of practice and staying consistent and discipline in the sense of like, if you're a creative and you have no plan at all, I'm sorry, but you're kind of gonna just crash and burn. Like discipline in regulating my nervous system, discipline in planning out my week with room for flexibility, making that checklist. You know, I love a good list. Discipline in that sense, which is very different than the discipline I was taught. Um, so yeah, and I think again, I just learned a lot of what not to do. And sometimes that's the
Yes.
biggest and brightest lesson of all. Um,
It's almost the quickest way to learn. Like I found that in my other profession, like my day job, like the realizing what you don't like or what
right.
environments don't serve you. But like the downside is obviously you get dragged through the mud to figure that out.
Exactly, exactly. And it's like why I find myself asking lately, why did it take so much trauma for me to finally crack, for me to finally wake up, really? And going back to what you said, I too feel like I had spent the majority of my 20s in a trauma loop
Yes.
because what happened to me as a child has stayed with me. I never went to therapy about it. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I suffered in silence. And that has affected me as an adult in my 20s because I was constantly seeking out other people, other teachers specifically, that could validate my trauma
Uh,
because I was in that trauma loop.
yeah, yeah.
And I wasn't even aware of it. And some of it was subconscious.
Yeah,
So
okay.
awareness is first.
Mm.
Awareness is everything. You have to know that something is wrong and something is right. So now that I'm in my 30s, like you, I'm like, wow, my entire life feels like a lie. It really did. And it's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Like I feel like I'm a baby deer, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, but there's a beauty in that. There's a beauty in starting over, giving yourself grace, recognizing that what happened to you is not your fault.
yeah.
It is not your fault. But, and here's the but, healing is a choice. That's what I've learned.
It is. It definitely
It,
is. You have to step up to the plate.
yep. And a lot of people know that they have trauma, and it is a choice to not heal. And I say that with respect because I know it can be hard. But again, maybe and it can be hard and the work is worth it. And again, though, not many people will do that. And I've had to let people go who are choosing toxic environments that I got out of and who are choosing not to heal because I am at the point where I cannot physically, for my own health and mental health, I cannot be friends and I cannot have a connection with somebody who is not in alignment with me. I'm done. Those connections have cost me my sanity and my health in the past, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Boundary, you know?
Boundary. Definition of a
It's really,
boundary.
really that simple. Like, I'm a Scorpio, if that hasn't been obvious, you know? And it's just have enough trauma, have enough crap happen to you, and you will learn to set boundaries real quick.
Yeah,
Not out of fear, not based in fear, but based in self-respect.
100%.
Self-respect.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a few things to say that can
Okay.
relate to this. Um I mean, my version of I'll speak to one chapter of my dance trauma. So when I dance full time, my full-time teacher negatively affected me just by sort of having favorite people in the classroom. And I was invisible in that
Great.
room right up until one day in class, I was singled out, I would say in a positive way, because he was finally giving me attention and mentorship, but in front of your peers. So
Yeah.
he made me dance the routine and then gave me corrections, and then I danced it a couple more times. But I was so, I was so focused on the perfectionism of, hitting the perfect body shapes and the lines,
Yep.
that his critique to me was I need to feel the music more. And like that is so vague. Like, and I'm a little bit on the spectrum, I feel like people, if you can't break it down in really simple terms, like you don't even really know how to teach it well. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it took me to step away from dance and just freestyle in my home to connect to songs that moved me from the inside first, rather than
Yeah.
somebody handing you a bunch of steps and go, copy this and do this and do it well when they're not even your own steps. So it's so artistry is so different when it comes from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. But just to talk on that particular year, like it was a chore. I was burnt out. Back in 2009, people didn't know what mental health was.
Oh,
And just to take everyone back, that was the year Michael Jackson died. So, it's
oh my gosh.
rewinding
Yeah.
our mind back to a time also when like Facebook was the biggest thing and Instagram wasn't really a thing yet. So, and even just filming on your phone wasn't a thing in class either. Um,
No.
yeah, so after that, I ended up wagging a few classes. Like I think we did the end of year showcase in December, and then we had class for a couple more weeks, and I was done. I just didn't want to go back. And I'm not the type to wag. I always think of myself as a teacher's pet. I do the right thing. I'm a good girl.
Yep.
All
Yep.
that crap that we now know is not true. Like,
Yep. I
I
did
like
the same thing.
being a rebel so much more fun when you're driven by what you desire in a positive way. Um, but I tried to return to the dance classroom after that particular year, and Emily, I would drive to class and I would subconsciously self-sabotage. I wouldn't be able to find a car park, and then I would just drive home. And this
Oh,
happened multiple times because I was trying to go to training and do the right thing. And yeah, and that's trauma. And I don't think I really
yeah.
knew that at the time either. But yeah, it kept happening over and over and over again. That kept happening. And I lost all my strength and my stamina and but I also didn't know who I was without dance. So I went on a quest, an identity quest, and I just wanted to like been dancing from the age of 3 to 18. I just wanted to not dance for a while and like learn who I was as a person without it. And
Yep.
then obviously the journey to come back around to it's always a beautiful thing. But it was really interesting to just give it up for a while and interact with friends that aren't performing arts friends too, like build networks that are not in the dance world either. I found that really refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to have a life outside of your art and to know who you are without it, because God forbid, you could break your leg. Then
Yeah.
what are you? What are you then?
Yeah.
And that's the blessing of like being in the theater where, I feel like I have multiple talents. I can act, I can sing, I can dance. You know, if something happens physically, at least I can still act and sing. But then
Hmm.
okay, it's just the more you can do, the better. But again, there's nothing more healing than knowing who you are outside of your work, because work is work. I mean, we've seen what happened when artists are method actors, when they can't separate that
Yes. Yeah.
line.
It's a
And honestly,
psychological
that
thing.
is something I'm still working on, especially creating my own work, because my own work very much feels personal to me. And in many ways, I can't separate it because I'm going into myself, and that's me. Some of the greatest musicians say, if you want to know anything about me, listen to my music, listen to my lyrics. I think,
Yeah.
someone like Taylor Swift is a perfect example, lyrical genius. If you
Mm.
want to know anything about her, listen to her music.
Yeah.
I love Stevie Nicks too. Stevie Nicks is the same. She said, I'll marry the music if I have to. So
Nice.
it is hard though. It's hard to know who are you when the lights are out, when the audience has left, when
Mm.
the show is over. Who are you
Mm. Yeah.
when
It's
all that
so
applause
important.
is gone?
Yes, it's so important to be grounded
Yes.
in your humanness and the artist. And then I chat to people in my I work in a barber shop is my day job. I cut hair for a living.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
I I'm in a really creative part of Melbourne too. So the barber shop's in a suburb called Thornbury, and the surrounding suburbs are like Fitzroy and Brunswick, and they're really like steeped in music and culture that like
Right.
creative hipsters basically. Um, and so the people I cut the hair of, even if they have a day job, they play an instrument or they are a musician and that's their job or something like that. But it's really interesting to talk to people around the identity stuff because some people are really sad and that they haven't pursued their creative endeavor. But I remind them and say, even though you're not actively playing the guitar or you're not on stage or whatever, like you're still a musician even though you're not actively doing it. It's the same as like you're still a dancer, you're still an actor, you are still that label. You can be multiple things and you can switch those hats. And it makes it feel like you as a identity, as a holistic person, we're
Mm,
multifaceted, and that's something I always preach on the podcast as well to people and artists to
yeah.
not get so down when we feel like we're not doing the thing or that we don't have an audition or that whatever it may be. But yeah.
Yes. And I think being multifaceted has actually worked against me in the past because I let it, because I felt like I had to pick one or two things and be really, really good at those one or two things.
Mm.
Whereas now in my 30s, I'm realizing, no, I am multi-talented, and thank God I am. I have all of these incredible talents, and I shouldn't limit myself. One day I feel like singing, one day I feel like dancing, and that's so cool. Like thank God that I have all these things that make me me. But again, it's just the conditioning that we've been taught. Typecasting, fit yourself into a box. That's where all of that noise comes from.
I even remember when I was dancing full time, there's always this underlying, or back in 2009, it wasn't LGBT friendly like it is now. And so commercially, it was always like girls needed to have long hair. So when we did choreography, we'd do like hairography, and it would be all part of that image, right? And so also to be really femme and to be really, it's that real, femme imagery, long hair, sex sells, but like in the zeitgeist of society, that's still the image of female that is being like really pushed into being a compulsory image. And I, at the time, like my hair's naturally curly, but I do a bunch of stuff with my hair. Like I've got red in it at the moment. I've got an undercut at the back, but that's because now I feel really comfortable with who I am. But even going into wanting to go to New York and get on Broadway, like you don't see a lot of performers with vivid hair color in their hair, in their headshots and things like that. I really want to slap and stamp that out because as artists, we are part of society. We're not supposed to blend in. It's not in our nature. And so this is where my rebelliousness comes out. It comes out in my makeup, in my hair, in my clothes, and like not wanting to fit that stereotypical girly image. Because I like to be a little bit masculine or a bit grungy and I want to wake up in the morning and make that decision for myself. I don't want to feel like that's coming from trying to fit a mold. So, and with the typecasting stuff, people want you to be able to blend between different, they want you to be a blank canvas so they can project onto you what they cast you as, basically.
Yes. It's hard to navigate because I think in our society we have roles. And again, it's all part of conditioning.
Yeah.
Um, but it's like I think typecasting stems from obviously real life. Okay, she is the mother type. He is the father type. She's the fierce, sexy dancer type. And I still need to take a deeper dive into typecasting and how it relates to culture and society. But all I know is I don't like it. And
Yeah.
it feels degrading and it feels limiting.
It's very polarizing. It's very black
It's
and white.
polarizing. Yes, because what people don't realize is humans, going back to what we were talking about at multifaceted. Humans are multifaceted. I also believe in the energy of like the yin and the yang. We
Mm,
have a feminine energy in us, but we also have a masculine energy in us.
yeah.
Um, and I think when those two energies are out of alignment, that's when things start to go a little, woo-woo,
Yeah.
because they're not balanced.
Mm,
And that's where like the toxic masculinity comes in because men have been taught to be the strong ones and suppress their emotions. And then sometimes women can become too emotional, so they need that grounding and that like masculine sort of rationalizing. Again, it just feeds into the idea that we have both energies within us. We're multifaceted. Um, and it's like my favorite thing I've seen is taking a female woman and putting her as a typical male lead.
mm.
Um, like I'm thinking of like one day, like, dang, I would love to play Hamlet. You know,
Yeah, totally.
the
Yeah.
thing where it kind of like shakes it up a little bit. And
Yeah.
maybe my own gender rebellion comes from the fact that I identify as a lesbian. And I've always, I think it stems from my past too of like feeling like I had to be the good little girl. I
Hmm.
had to wear the cute little lipstick and pull my hair back in the perfect bun with the hairnet. Can't
Yeah.
forget the hairnet. God forbid you don't have a hairnet. Oh my,
Yeah.
you know. I had to point my toes perfectly. I had to smile on stage, even though I wanted to cry. And so I think and I'm not saying that's why I'm a lesbian. I was born this way, honey, but it's like, thank
I
you,
think that's a
Gaga.
given, but yeah.
But I think it like plays into my rebellion a little bit for
Yeah.
sure
Oh,
as a person.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I relate in a very similar way, like sexuality wise as well. And
Yeah.
so, like, yeah, wanting to just be more in like active wear as opposed to leotards. Like, I
Oh, I
didn't
hate
want to
these.
be, yeah, like, to be pubescent and dealing with ballet tights and a leotard and like I was always really, the curvier one, the more muscular one, just naturally
Yeah,
as well.
me too.
Um, yeah, so no, it was really frustrating. And I did 6 years of ballet, and ballet is very stereotypically femme. And I wanted to do jazz and musical theater. But I got stuck in, like, that's another story to share. But like, I was, told ballet is the foundation of all dance styles, but
Ooh,
it's not
no.
where I belonged. And like, I ended up doing like point solos and everything. And in the end, I was like, what is this? Like, and it was just, I was on the conveyor belt of the progression, the progression elevator. You just go through all the levels of exams and then, yeah, but I definitely relate to you in a very similar way of just, it's like, I want to dance, but I don't want to do this. And I think when you're young, you don't know how to articulate the difference between I want to dance, I want to perform, I want to express, but you don't know how to say this environment's not good for me or I don't want to do this genre anymore.
Yep, because you feel like you can't, because you are not in the position of perceived power. I say perceived power,
Mm.
because I think it's an illusion that we feel that we cannot use our voice and speak up. So therefore, you do have power, actually. You do. Um, you do. And yeah, I think it's just there are so many things in the dance world, even today, that I still think discrimination exists and stereotypes exist, typecasting exists. And although we've come a long way, um, there is still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, it's not normalized yet. I'm
No,
still waiting to
not.
see more like masculine females put into a spotlight that's not a stereotype. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
the queer community altogether wants to see more queer content be made normalized. It shouldn't
Yes.
be something that we see and it feels jarring even to queer people to see it because we know, oh, we all as a collective have to get used to this being integrated. It's an integration. Yeah, even with roles like you mentioned, like flipping the gender. I know racially we're really like woke now, if I can say that. Like different roles, you know, Snow White is now being played by a black woman
Yep.
on Broadway or, you know, or
We had
Belle in Beauty and the
Audra and
Beast.
Gypsy.
Yeah, yeah. And so I did a production years ago, a community theatre of the producers, and
Mm, yeah.
I wasn't aiming to be a particular role, but the role was handed to me. I got to play the accountant, the manager, the boss.
Oh yeah.
And you know, it's funny because once you put a female in that role, she becomes almost like a dominatrix because she's the one in
Yeah.
power and
Yeah.
bossing all the men around. So that was my role. And then I had a tearaway costume and it went into all the showgirls came out of the cabinets and then Leo Bloom took off my like suit and I was a showgirl underneath and got to join in with the line of dancers. It was so
Oh,
fun.
fun. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, it'd be great to see some more gender switches for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And then also going back to like the ballet world, and you had touched something earlier on the music and how it's frustrating when, especially with ballet, where it's like it feels like, okay, these are the steps given. This is first position, this is second position, A plus B equals C. That's very much how ballet can feel sometimes.
Yeah,
Um, you know, or like even jazz. It feels like you're just given the steps, given the choreography, especially in competition dance.
yeah,
Whereas now in my 30s, I use the music. Music is first and foremost. I get all of my feelings, all of my inspiration off of the music because think about dancing without music. Personally, I can't do that.
yeah,
Um, and I think it's like when you, as an artist, as a dancer, when you first learn to analyze the music, your movement becomes free because you're not thinking about the steps, you're not thinking about the technique. In your head, you're thinking about what is the music saying? What is the music making me feel? How am I at one with the music artist? How can I serve the music artist? So then it suddenly doesn't become about you anymore. It's an
mm,
act of service.
mm.
And that's what I think is missing in teaching, especially choreographers nowadays, where it seems as if, oh, I just want to teach this class because I want it to be filmed and I'm going to film like every other class because then I
Stresses
have
me out.
and I'm going to use these dancers to promote myself and promote my work. No,
Yeah, the ego side of
no.
teaching really shits me.
Well,
Like
and social media has played into that. And I would say it plays 95% into that.
100%. Yeah. It's pretty prevalent over in Australia now. Like it's across the board now, like the industry. But I've been covering classes recently and I taught just last night. And one of the classes ended up just having one attendee. Like it's a covering class, like these things can
Yep,
happen. Um,
absolutely.
and she was apologetic and she didn't want to waste my time, which is so silly. I was like, no, 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 I'm going to teach you. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And so we did the class, and then at the end, I filmed it, but it came from an act of service. And I said to
Yeah.
her, you never really get to get footage of you dancing unless, you know, someone intentionally just films you. And if it's a room full of people, like we had the privilege, it was just her and I in the class. And as much as I felt like this is awesome for me, there's always that little like voice in my mind that's like, don't, it's not about me. Don't make it
Yeah.
about me. It's about the
Yeah.
student and it's about their learning journey. Because even when I went to LA for those tiny little 8 days, I
Mhm.
did only did two classes. They happened to be master classes. It was all coincidental. It was like an amazing experience. But one of the classes in particular, it was all about the choreographers and they made it about them. And it felt really like I know I was in LA, but the only way I can describe it was it felt really celebrity, but
Yeah.
self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Um,
Call it what
whereas
it
Yeah, but
is.
like I'm used to in Australia, if you go to a master class, like you just want to soak up everything they're teaching you. And I just felt like from a master class perspective, it was just like we're here, we've got a name, we're going to teach you a routine. But there was no teaching and breaking
Yeah,
it
it's
down.
that
Like
funny. There was no
where
teaching
there was
in a
no
master
teaching. Yeah, in a master class, it was like, yeah. So it was really strange to me to pick myself up from Australia and plonk myself in LA and be like, I'm here with these amazing choreographers, and then I'm just like, I was scratching my head, being like, I'm either not keeping up very well with the class because there was also no limit capacity to the room either. It felt like I was in there with 200 people. You couldn't
Mm,
move. So
yeah.
they taught us as a whole group and then they split the room in half and then you could finally actually do the routine. But they taught it to you. So now that you finally have space to move, like you're doing the steps for the first time and then there was a cameraman there. I don't
So
know
they
what was
didn't even
going
break
on.
it up into smaller groups before they filmed?
Not that I remember. I mean,
God.
yeah, it was, I'll be quite
Yeah,
honest, it felt like an audition. Like
I'm sure.
that's the only
Yeah.
way I can describe it from my own experience of auditions was like, they throw the steps at you. It's really quick. You might be, it was so crowded. I couldn't even see the teacher in the mirror. I was actually looking at the three lines of people in front of me to see what's the move. It was really bizarre, but a very eye-opening experience at the same time. Um, yeah.
And that's where I think sometimes we can almost gaslight ourselves because we think, oh, there must be something wrong with me that I can't seem to pick up the choreography in a room of 200 people when I can't even see the choreographer, when I can't even move, when the choreographer is not even at least doing that decency to split the groups into smaller groups so I can move before they film. There
Mm,
must be something wrong with me. It's my fault. No, no, it is not your fault. You are in an environment where the teacher
mm.
is selfish and doesn't know how to teach. That's the problem.
Yeah, or just the fact that it was so crowded, like first few lines of
And that
people,
it's so
or rows of
crowded.
people, they would have got all the details.
Yeah.
And it was, and you do gaslight yourself a bit. Actually, when I went on that trip, I was so out of like training, because it was like I was 24, so I'd come out of full-time dance at 18, 19. So it was like 5 years of no formal training, and I was like, I'm just gonna see how I go. But yeah, people are dressed up there like to be booked or to be noticed, or they're treating it like to be seen. And I was jet lagged and on holiday, so I just had my hair in a messy bun. I was wearing like what I would say my rehearsal clothes. Like I didn't hand pick anything major fancy, but people were there like full face of makeup, their hair was curled, like they were ready to be seen. And in my mind I was like, I'm here to train, I'm here to get sweaty, I'm here to like be just like kind of like when when you train in Melbourne, at least like you'll go to class no makeup, like you're there to work hard and to kind of be sloppy basically.
Well, and I think that is the problem with social media. The lines get blurred because pre-social media, class used to just be class
Yes.
because there were no cameras. So you felt like you were able to be freer, more imperfect because you didn't have a camera on you. Where now the lines are blurred. And I think
Mm,
for myself, the way I handle filming is I like to say, okay, who, three dancers, who wants to go? Who wants to be filmed? And then I'll also pick out like a select group. So that way it feels like I'm empowering the dancers and
Mm,
I'm giving them a choice.
yeah.
And when I first started teaching, to be honest, I didn't know how to navigate that, and I
Mm,
felt really bad for not knowing, but I think it just takes time, it takes practice, it takes skill to be able to recognize, okay, this is the world we live in. Social media exists. As a performer, in my opinion, I want to have it. I do think it's essential with the world we live in.
yeah.
Um, for my career, I do. And so I'm going to adapt and I'm going to make it work for me in a way that feels authentic. So there's a way to also teach and have the cameras in class at the same time, but it is a delicate balance. And I would say 5% of teachers know how to do it. Five.
I feel like, because I'm teaching now too, and I feel like I'm only going to keep teaching as time goes on. Um,
Yeah.
it would be great to have some kind of mentoring around the social media side and being a dance teacher, like communication in the room. How do you, like you mentioned a select group, like at the moment, if I film, a lot of students will just grab their own phones and put them like at the foot of the mirror in front of them. And then I'm like, cool, you're filming, it's on your phone, you're filming
Yeah.
you, like you're the focus in that video. But
Right.
if I want to film, which I feel like, I love media, I love being able to dabble with the technology, things like that. And it's kind of nice for me as a teacher to just have choreography reference too. Sometimes I choreograph on the spot. So
Yeah.
if I film it, I have it, I can look back on it and remind myself, whatever. Um, but yeah, to sort of like allow students to volunteer themselves to be filmed or allow themselves to step out and stand on the sidelines if they don't want to be filmed.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it's from a more so like a creative director point of view. I would want to be able to pick select students to showcase them in the brightest of light, to be like,
Absolutely.
select group. Like, so how do you communicate that in the classroom, or how do you feel like it should be communicated?
Ooh, it is tough. I think I always try to make it a learning experience for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think some days one student could just totally be on fire, could totally just resonate with a specific song. Usually it's all about the song.
Yeah.
Um, you can take the same dance steps, put it to a different song, one song you like, one song you don't, completely different, at least for me. So
Mhm.
maybe one student really connects with the song, therefore they're dancing better, they're having a good day. And I would use what I like about what they're doing, and I would use that as a learning experience. I would say, I love how so and so is doing this and this. And then I would also maybe give them as well a correction or like a like constructive feedback. Um, say, oh, you're doing this great, and how can we do this? Like I try to, I hope I'm explaining this well, but I try to make
Yeah.
it a learning experience so then it takes the focus away from the filming. But then I also think it's like important to have the conversation with the students about what does that little camera represent?
Ah,
What
so
is the
true.
deeper meaning behind that lens?
Mm,
And that is what I've come to believe is a mirror. It's a
mm.
mirror through which we are seen and we allow ourselves to be seen. And that is the issue with social media because everybody, yeah, everybody is trying to, of course, put their best work out there. Of course, you want to show up as your best self. You don't want to embarrass yourself. You're not going to post a selfie where, there's a booger coming out of your nose and you just woke up. Like, no, you're
Yeah.
not going to do that. Something my therapist told me is your social media is your portfolio. It is your portfolio as an artist.
Mm.
You never know who is watching,
Hmm.
never know who's looking.
Hmm.
So, of course, you want to be perceived well. However, how can you flip that and be like, well, just because I want to be perceived well doesn't mean it has to be perfect. That's the
Yeah.
key.
Yes.
So, how can I show up in this filming session in class? How can I show up not perfectly, but authentically? Maybe it's
Authentically.
authentic that I got so emotional that I fell out of my turn. Cool. Great.
Yeah.
Was it authentic? Yeah, it sure freaking was.
Mm.
And just because I fell out of my turn because I was just so emotional and into the music, does that matter? Like, no. So it's like we have to change our perception on what that little camera represents. And we also have to be willing to be cringy. We have
Yes.
to lean into the cringe.
Yes. I'm all about
Cringe,
this. Yeah.
cringe is just rooted in perfectionism. It's rooted
Yeah.
in people pleasing. It's rooted in shame,
Yeah.
fear. It's like, and creating. Actually taking action and creating. And every time you produce something on social media, every time you put your work out there, guess what? The cringe becomes less and less and less.
And I
So
think
you
you become more
sit in the
confident
room.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. But it's again, it's like if you never try, if you never allow yourself to be seen, if you never volunteer to go dance when the choreographer says, "Who wants to do it?" You're going to be living in a land of cringe. And that cringe is going to suffocate you. It reminds me of the quote by Brene Brown. What is it? Like, unused creativity is not benign. Um,
It
it about
massasizes.
suffocation. I really should memorize this, but it's a Brene Brown quote about unused creativity. Um, and it can like suffocate you into resentment and fear, basically. So you just have to like rip the band-aid off and do it and allow yourself to be seen, allow yourself to be yeah, seen. It's just really all about being seen.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you said, keeping the focus on the fact that it's a learning experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's definitely the angle I would come from as well as a teacher in the room. One of the things that I love to say to my students, because I teach mainly adults, but even to adults, I'll say, you know, um, the art of observation. So, like watching your peers perform,
Yeah.
you get to study dance through the visualization using your sight. It's not just the beat, the
Yes.
music, the coordination in your body, but like watching it your brain will pick up things too. It's the same with hairdressing. Like when you watch people do haircuts day in and day out, if you're an apprentice, most of the day you're just watching a senior do haircuts, but you learn so much from watching. So and then, I love to rotate the lines so that the people at the back, they think they're hidden, but no, you're going to come to the front. Like if you're a beginner and you feel the most least confident in the room, you actually belong in the front row so you can see the teacher and the mirror. So
Yeah.
these are all the things that I like to do in class as well. And to get everyone cheering each other on too, that really flips the energy in the room to being like, perfectionism. The biggest thing I love to remind my students is like, we do this to have fun. And
Yes.
everyone starts to stiffen up in the room, and the adults stiffen up in the room, and they're there just for fitness reasons and to have fun, to be fit and to have fun. But I still have to remind them as well. I'm just like, they're not competition dancers or like elite performers. But again, social media, we see all these videos and it's easy to watch all the TikTok dances. And even though the choreography in the TikTok dances is very simple, like it can be done badly, it can be done good. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Again, that's all perception too, you know. What one person might think is good, another person could think is bad, and vice versa, you know?
yeah, like it's unbelievable. Like from an artistry point of view, I'll be scrolling just for the sake of scrolling. I'm probably like, like everyone else on a doom scroll. And
Yeah.
I'll see some of the most like basic videos and it's got like, 37 or 200,000 likes on it. And it's really disappointing when you put so much effort into your own videos and they get 500 views. Like, but I still use the perspective of like, imagine you're in a theater with 500 people sitting down in that theater. That's how many people saw your video. So I
Yeah.
try to bring
Yeah.
it around like that. But yeah, I mean, social media is one thing, but like internet culture is a completely
You
different.
know, I actually have a lot to say on that because you found me on this account. I just kind of started that. I actually deleted my old account because quite frankly, I just needed a fresh start. And
Hmm.
it was my way of releasing people from my past that I felt didn't understand this new elevated
Mm.
authentic version of me.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna rebuild and just start over and find my people and find my community because I have that old account since like high school, middle school. So yeah.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Fresh energy. Yeah.
but what I realized is so for things to succeed on social media, they need to be relatable in some way. Like people need to identify with whatever you're saying, or they need to um or it's like knowledge, like they want to learn something from you that you're teaching. And what's interesting is like some of the things I had been posting lately about sharing my journey, sharing my story, probably through one of the videos you found me, like that is my truth. That is my story. It literally probably took me like half an hour to piece all that together. It was old footage, some of it was blurry. And one of my video now has like, 20,000 views or something, almost 20,000 views. Which for like a new account, I feel like that's relatively good.
Yeah.
Then it's like I also post videos where it's more professionally done. I still use my iPhone, but it's the settings that I use, the equipment, the lighting, all the editing.
They look
So it
amazing, by the way. Like I
too.
I watch them and like because I know how to sort of reverse engineer a video when I look at it from a technical like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
tech point of view. And so I was just like, oh, I need to learn some things from her.
It's
Like it's
all
so
my
well
iPhone.
done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But it's been interesting because those videos, ironically, although they feel like my little babies, my little chickens, my artistic babies, they have the least amount of views. And I think it's interesting because, first of all, I had to accept, well, they are selfish. They are selfish in the sense where it's an artistic project and it is something that I needed to create because I needed to get the emotion out of me
Hmm.
and put it
Hmm.
into my creativity
Yes.
and turn this pain, turn this trauma into something beautiful. And I even get like choked up when I say that because I think that is my purpose to transmute pain into beauty, um, trauma into purpose, into meaning, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
Well, it
and
gave me a lot of healing. I just want to say that.
oh, well,
Like
thank you. But
it did. It
well,
really, really did. Like that's what compelled me to take the risk and ask you to come on the podcast because I was
okay.
like, it's like I
Oh,
said, it's like it was like looking into a mirror of my own past and my own traumas with
oh,
it. And I feel like I'm on my own little island here preaching all this stuff. And then I've come across yourself. I know there's probably plenty of people out there with the same stories as you and I. And
yeah.
I've always believed that, but I find in my own community of dancers that I come across, they're not as vulnerable and as authentic. And they're still, by the way, learning from these teachers that I felt that trauma from. I know
Yeah.
we all process things differently, but that's definitely how I processed it and realized, you know, even just covering these classes at the moment, he's teaching in the room opposite me and I'm in the other room. So talk about a full circle moment where I know I can just be interjecting more positive energy into rooms in the same facility.
Yeah,
Um,
that is loaded.
so that, yeah, and like that happened last week was my first week covering for this particular class. And so we even pass each other in the hallway. And I I know people in the industry, but I always have that imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know if people remember me, when they see your face or name. I like to assume first that people don't know me because I don't want to have that big ego, I suppose, too. Um, but yeah, like we literally had to shuffle past shoulders in the hallway because it was so crowded. And I was like, oh my God, like he was right here. And I was like, okay. Like, and then he went to that room and I went to that room and we had the same time slot. And I'm like, this is a weird healing moment and full circle as well. But we've got only like a few more minutes left, so I think we'll try and wrap it up in this time. We could probably I'll have you back on the podcast again if you're
Yeah,
keen.
I would love to. This was
Because there's
excellent.
always more to unpack, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to ask you the question of sort of where you're at now moving forward with your career. Like, are you actively pursuing performing? Like, I've got my own dream of being on Broadway. Like, do you have a similar dream?
You know, right now I'm finding a very beautiful balance of creating my own work while simultaneously auditioning for the things that I feel in alignment with. Um, and especially after an audition, I'm realizing that I will always come back to myself and I will always come back to my inner creativity. Whereas in the past, I was so focused on getting the job, booking the role, and using that to express myself. So I think it's important to not only be a vessel and like an actor, an artist, but also be a creator and have those two things. So I just want to live a creative life. I mean, obviously, I'd love to be. Um, I don't even want to say Broadway. I just want to be doing work that I feel like I'm in alignment with. I'm
Yes.
a, I'm surrounded by good people. I'm getting paid for what I'm worth as an
Oh
artist.
yeah, that can be on the
It's
next episode.
something that is important to me. And I would love to say that I can make a living in the arts. So if that's a combination of creating my own work, teaching, I'd love to work with music artists one day, choreograph their music videos, choreograph the shows they have. I'd love to do everything. And again, it's like I don't TV, film, Broadway, sure. I don't want to limit myself. So
Yeah,
just live a creative life.
don't limit yourself. Yes, I
Yeah.
fully agree. I want to take the time to thank you for jumping on and for being authentic with me and vulnerable with me and like getting to know me as well. Got to know you
Yeah.
too. And yeah, I'll put all your details in the show notes for people to follow along on social media with your Instagram or any other handles that you want to like just shoot them through a text and I'll put everything in there. Otherwise, plug your handle. What's your handle on Instagram?
Yeah, so it's at Emily Nies, so that's Nies creates. That is my Instagram. I have a
Awesome.
TikTok as well, but it's the same handle, so
All right, there you go. TikTok as well, everybody. Yeah, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. So thank you so much again, and
it's been a
keep being
pleasure.
keep being creative, and yeah, I'm
Yes.
sure we'll keep in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.